by some unrelated bombshell. It has happened with past presidents, and it has happened with almost every international trip President Trump has been on. And Argentina is no different. Heading to the helicopter this morning at a 10-hour flight to Buenos Aires, President Trump unloaded on Michael Cohen with both barrels.
He's a weak person, and by being weak, unlike other people that you watch, he's a weak person, and what he's trying to do is get a reduced sentence. So very simply, Michael Cohen is lying.
President Trump insists the Moscow Trump Tower proposal was not a secret. In fact, Michael Cohen had revealed plans for a big project in Moscow to Fox News. But contrary to what Cohen told Congress and Fox News, President Trump says it was his decision, not Cohen's, to cancel the project.
I decided not to do the project, so I didn't do it. So we're not talking about doing a project. We're talking about not doing a project.
The Cohen plea bombshell suddenly added even more significance to President Trump's scheduled meeting at the G20 with Russian President Vladimir Putin. But the president had only been on Air Force One for a heartbeat when he tweeted, "Based on the fact that the ships and sailors have not been returned to Ukraine from Russia, I have decided it would be best for all parties concerned to cancel my previously scheduled meeting in Argentina with President Vladimir Putin. I look forward to a meaningful summit again as soon as this situation is resolved." The cancellation came as a surprise. Russian officials confirmed just this morning that the meeting was on.
Well, you know, the thing is that Washington actually has confirmed the meeting. It will be around midday on the 1st of December.
And on the way out the door, President Trump seemed to indicate it was a go.
I probably will be meeting with President Putin. We haven't terminated that meeting. I was thinking about it, but we haven't. I think it's a very good time to have the meeting.
En route to Buenos Aires, the press secretary filled in some detail on the decision, saying President Trump canceled the meeting after reviewing a detailed report on Russia's actions in Ukraine and being briefed by the Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, and Chief of Staff. Canceling the Putin meeting leaves the summit with Chinese President Xi as the premier event of the president's trip. President Trump is optimistic about the possibility of a breakthrough on trade, but he tweaked Xi just a little bit this morning to remind him of the stakes.
I think we're very close to doing something with China, but I don't know that I want to do it, because what we have right now is billions and billions of dollars coming into the United States in the form of tariffs or taxes. I'm open to making a deal, but frankly, I like the deal we have right now.
Sources tell Fox News that the president first learned of the Cohen deal last night. A member of his legal team, Jane Raskin, was informed of the pending deal by the Department of Justice. Raskin then informed the president. Fox News is told by sources that the president's reaction was rather nonplussed. He didn't really seem to worry too much about it, saying it only proves what he has known all along, that Michael Cohen is a liar. Brett?
John Roberts in Buenos Aires at the G20 summit. John, thanks. President Trump says he was a businessman before he was president and, as you just heard, did nothing wrong in regards to Russia. And his lawyer is confirming to Fox News that the president did answer questions about the real estate project or possible project in Moscow to the special counsel. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge has that part of the story tonight. Good evening, Catherine.
Thank you, Brett, and good evening. Speaking to Fox News earlier today, the president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, confirmed Special Counsel Mueller asked questions about the Moscow real estate proposal, and there is, quote, no contradiction between the president's written answers for Mueller and Cohen, whose congressional testimony paved the way for today's deal.
When the president's former personal attorney testified behind closed doors to the Senate Intelligence Committee last year, he also provided a two-page written summary about a Moscow real estate project. According to a draft obtained by Fox, Cohen told congressional investigators the proposal was under consideration at the Trump Organization from September 2015 until the end of January 2016. But Cohen told a New York court the discussions lasted another 5 months. Cohen continued, I never considered asking Mr. Trump to travel to Russia in connection with this proposal. To the best of my knowledge, Mr. Trump was never in contact with anyone about this proposal other than me on 2 occasions. But the plea says Cohen agreed to travel and contemplated his boss might also make the trip. On Capitol Hill, the Senate Intelligence Committee leadership reacted.
There seems to be a trend here amongst so many of the president's closest allies that they don't tell the truth.
I haven't seen the specific indictment or the plea, but this is a reason people shouldn't lie when they're in front of a congressional investigation.
Felix Sater, Russian-born business developer, told the Senate panel that he was the go-between on the Moscow project. In this November 2015 email, Sater boasts to Cohen about his ties to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Quote, "Buddy, our boy can become president of the USA, and we can engineer it. I will get all of Putin's team to buy in on this. I will manage this process. There's no one on this planet that wants Donald elected more than I do." The Moscow real estate deal was never sealed.
We were thinking about building a building. I guess we had in a form, it was an option. I don't know what you'd call it. I decided ultimately not to do it. There would have been nothing wrong if I did do it.
Based on the new Cohen timeline, the negotiations with Moscow continued well into the presidential campaign and during the same month of the controversial June 2016 Trump Tower meeting. Legal experts say Cohen may be problematic for the special counsel in the future.
At some point, someday, Bob Mueller might call Michael Cohen as a witness. This is a guy who you have indicted for making false statements to Congress, and at the same time, you're now holding him up as a model of probity or as someone whose word can be taken at face value.
In today's plea, Cohen said he briefed Trump family members, but none of the president's children are identified. Meantime, in his Senate testimony, Donald Trump Jr. said he was, quote, peripherally aware of the deal. Brad.
Okay, Catherine, stand by if you would. Let's talk more about the implications of the Cohen plea with Catherine here, and also joining us from New York, Fox News senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, you hear the president. He says, listen, I was a businessman. I was running for president. I could do this. The deal never came around. It didn't materialize. Where is the threat to the president in this particular development today?
Well, the statements that the president made, which you just summarized, are all probably true, and they don't reflect anything unlawful. But the danger for him is whatever Michael Cohen told Bob Mueller's investigators in the 70 hours that they debriefed him sometime in the past 3 or 4 months. The last time Michael Cohen pleaded guilty, the prosecuting entity was the federal prosecutors here in New York in the same courthouse. Today, when he pleaded guilty, it was Bob Mueller's team, which came up from Washington, D.C. So we don't know what Michael Cohen gave Bob Mueller in return for reducing his exposure from many years in jail down to 6 months. That's the danger to the president. And we may never know it. It depends how Bob Mueller wants to use it. Michael Cohen is not somebody that Bob Mueller is going to put on the witness stand any more than he's going to put Paul Manafort on the stand. But he can take the information they gave him, and if he can corroborate it through a credible source, use it thereafter.
Right, and that's important because, Catherine, to Judge's point, I mean, you are losing credibility when you charge somebody criminally with lying.
Correct.
He has done that numerous times now, so these people are not exactly the best witnesses if you're bringing a case forward, but we don't know what else Mueller has to corroborate some of this stuff.
We don't, and the criticism of the special counsel is that these are all process crimes. These are lying to federal investigators. They are lying to Congress. I'm not in any way minimizing that, but it doesn't go to the core issue of the allegation of coordination between the Trump campaign and Russian officials. Something that really caught my attention today is that people should be prosecuted for lying to Congress, but other individuals at the heart of the Russia case, such as Christopher Steele, who was the author of the Trump dossier. He is the subject of a criminal referral from the Senate Judiciary Committee. Also, Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS. His firm was played by the DNC and the Clinton campaign to put the dossier together, and he has a problematic testimony to Congress. So publicly, we haven't seen any action on those cases. Maybe privately it's happened, but Cohen is really the first person we see pay a penalty.
You know, Judge, it does seem like this is coming to a head. It also seems perhaps that Mueller or his team have concerns about Matt Whitaker, the acting attorney general, and that maybe some of these court filings are really about getting the story as they see it out, just in case the report doesn't make it through that block of Matt Whitaker at the Justice Department.
Well, yeah, well, you're right about that. I mean, in examining the special counsel rules, it's interesting. The special counsel doesn't need Acting Attorney General Whitaker's approval to do anything. He merely must inform Acting Attorney General Whitaker, Matt Whitaker, of whatever he's going to do, which we gather from the reporting of our colleague John Roberts happened last night at about the same time that the that the White House learned about this. But you're correct. A lot of things have happened since the midterm elections, and this has been a critical week. I don't think that we've seen the end of this. I described what happened in court this morning as, it's a trite phrase, but I think it's accurate here, the tip of the iceberg. Bob Mueller knows what the rest of that iceberg is. Michael Cohen knows what the rest of that iceberg is. Mueller will decide when, how, and under what circumstances, if at all, to let the rest of us know.
Yeah, it does seem like everything went a little bit more fast forward, Catherine, after the president filed the answers to those questions, which you said included one about this real estate deal.
That's right. I think that was one of the big revelations today, as the special counsel Mueller, among those questions, did ask about this proposal to build a tower in Moscow by the Trump organization. Up until now, that was certainly not known to us through our reporting. And what Rudy Giuliani, the president's attorney, said to us today is that they don't see any contradiction between the president's written answers and what was stated in the Cohen plea. So they still feel very comfortable. But the timing, when you line up the data points, certainly has that feel of almost cascading or domino effect.
You know, Judge, we've seen all kinds of reporting here. There's new reporting right now. BuzzFeed has a story saying that President Trump's company planned to give a $50 million penthouse at Trump Tower, Moscow, to Vladimir Putin as the company negotiated this luxury real estate development during the 2016 campaign, according to 4 people. We don't have that independently confirmed. We've seen other stories fall apart. So we'll be careful about this. But is the argument that a negotiation, even if he's doing a business deal, that as that's happening with a hostile foreign power, as he's running for president and eventually becomes president, that it is potentially something that could be held over the head of the president by Russia?
You know, I think the president's statement today, right, you ran a clip of it earlier when John Roberts was on, in which he said, what's the big deal? This is a deal we didn't do. I think he's on very solid ground there. The problem for the president will come if, for example, Michael Cohen says the president told me to lie, and I lied before the Senate Intelligence Committee because he and I decided to concoct a scheme to trick people. That's where the president will be impaled. But not doing a deal, no matter how luxurious it was or lurid it was, not doing it can't hurt him.
All right, Catherine, Judge, thank you very much. Investigators raided the German headquarters of Deutsche Bank today in Frankfurt, Germany. The bank's offices were reported in connection with the Panama Papers money laundering investigation. Deutsche Bank is where Donald Trump did and does a lot of his business. Worth noting, just last year, Robert Mueller subpoenaed the bank as part of his investigation into the campaign. The FBI also raided the Chicago offices of President Trump's former taxman, city alderman, a decade doing property tax work for then businessman Donald Trump. According to the Chicago Sun-Times, Burke's office stopped working for now President Trump this summer, citing irreconcilable differences. Now to news overseas. As Trump is making his way to Argentina for the G20 summit at this hour, but has already called off a planned meeting with Vladimir Putin over Russia's seizure of Ukrainian vessels. This as Ukraine's president calls on NATO for help. Correspondent Trey Yingst has our report.
Ukraine's President Petro Poroshenko is calling for backup. Today he asked NATO to deploy warships in the Sea of Azov and accused Russia of wanting to take over all of Ukraine. While Ukraine is not a member of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, as a partner country, Ukraine can ask NATO for assistance if under attack. The country is now under martial law, and troops are preparing for a ground invasion from Russia, as new details emerge about the firefight Sunday that ended with the capture of 24 Ukrainian sailors by Russian forces. The deputy head of security service in Ukraine released new intelligence today about the clash, saying the Russians used attack helicopters with rockets, fighter jets, and also large-scale Navy weapons, suggesting the Russian operation was pre-planned.
The Ukrainian soldiers miraculously survived after suffering 6 various types of attacks by the aggressor.
Tensions continue to flare between Russia and Ukraine near the Sea of Azov, as a Ukrainian minister said today that Russia is blocking two of his country's major seaports, affecting at least 35 vessels. Officials also say the Kerch Strait is blocked for Ukrainian ships. A Kremlin spokesperson is denying that the Russians are blocking any movement in this area. Today I spoke with a Ukrainian resident in the town of Berdyansk, one of the port cities that is reportedly being blocked by Russian forces. He said, quote, "We are trying to keep calm and hope for the best. Ukraine is really in need of support from the world." Brett?
Trey, thank you. The winning streak is over after 3 days of gains. The market finished the day in the red. The Dow down 28 points. The S&P 500 lost about 6. The Nasdaq lost 18.5. Up next, how plans to protect the special counsel have led to a stalemate up on Capitol Hill. That's coming up. This is a Fox News alert. Just a short time ago, Republican Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina said he will oppose one of President Trump's judicial nominees, essentially spiking Judge Thomas Farr's appointment to the federal bench. Farr has been accused of efforts to disenfranchise black voters. It was a controversial appointment, but was expected to go through. This move comes as the president's own party holds things up on Capitol Hill in a fight over protecting special counsel Robert Mueller. Chief Congressional Correspondent Mike Emanuel shows us how.
President Trump faces strong headwinds from his own party on two fronts in the United States Senate. Retiring Senator Jeff Flake has slammed the brakes on the president's judicial nominees, pushing for a vote on a measure to protect special counsel Robert Mueller.
There are a lot of judges that we could have moved today that are supported on a bipartisan basis. I want to move some of these judges. I just think it's priority right now to get a vote on the special counsel bill.
The Senate was expected to vote today on Trump judicial nominee Thomas Farr, but that was bumped to next week. All 49 Democrats are against him, and with Flake a no and other Republicans on the fence, Farr is on hold, lacking enough votes, and the Senate Democratic leader is piling on him.
There is simply a preponderance of evidence that Mr. Farr was involved, often intimately, in decades of voter suppression in North Carolina.
There's also intense frustration from senators that CIA Director Gina Haspel hasn't been sent to brief lawmakers about the brutal murder of Jamal Khashoggi. Instead, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Defense Secretary Jim Mattis addressed senators.
It's outrageous that the Senate can be stonewalled from hearing from the CIA director.
A day after saying he was, quote, pissed about not hearing directly from Director Haspel, White House ally Senator Lindsey Graham says he's been promised he'll get answers from the CIA, but thinks it should brief all senators.
I hope they will, but, it's up to, everybody else can get a briefing if they want it. I would recommend they brief the entire Senate, but they're going to brief me.
Graham joined with his Senate colleagues in a 63-37 warning shot at the White House yesterday, voting to suspend U.S. military support for the Saudi-led war in Yemen. And many Republicans say they aren't willing to give the Saudis the benefit of the doubt.
I don't trust any of them in any countries in the Middle East, except for Israel. I trust the countries like I trust gas station sushi, and I think most Americans feel that way.
The dilemma on this Thomas Farr nomination that just unfolded in the last few minutes is you have all 49 Democrats saying they are no. Jeff Flake says he's uncomfortable with the nomination. He's a no. And then you had Tim Scott becoming a 51st no. That's why you have Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer declaring victory tonight and praising Senator Scott for his courage. Brett?
Mike Emanuel live on the Hill. Mike, thanks. Retiring House Speaker Paul Ryan is casting doubt on the California election system as it appears 7 Republican-held seats will flip to Democrat control. Ryan saying today that it just defies logic, that 3 weeks after the election, they have basically lost every California race. Ryan is not, however, calling for an investigation into the matter. As it stands tonight, Democrats will have control of the House 234 to Republicans 199 in the new year. However, that's expected to go up by at least 1. Democrats flipped 39 seats. It could be 40 if that California race is called. The average loss for a president's party is 33 seats. As we mentioned, 2 are still uncalled, 1 in California and 1 in New York. Speaking of California, California Democratic Party Chairman Eric Bauman is resigning following sexual misconduct allegations. Bauman announced his decision late this afternoon, just hours after Governor-elect Gavin Newsom called for him to step aside. Bauman released a statement saying he's come to the realization that resigning is in everyone's best interest, including to those who he may have caused pain, and for the good of the Democratic Party. Up next, a sex trafficking case with ties to some of the biggest names in politics. You'll see it here. First, beyond our borders tonight, the World Health Organization reports that the deadly Ebola outbreak in the Congo is now the second largest in history. The Congo's health ministry announced the number of cases has reached 426. Experts believe it could be another 6 months before that Ebola is contained. And China's government has ordered a stop to work by a medical team that claims to have helped make the world's first gene-edited babies. A Chinese researcher claims to have altered the DNA of twin girls born earlier this month and has said a second pregnancy may be underway. Hong Kong has ordered an investigation. Just a couple of the other stories beyond our borders tonight. We'll be right back. The life expectancy rate in the U.S. is going down again, and sadly, it's due in part to things that are very preventable. Correspondent Jonathan Serra joins us live from our Atlanta bureau with the troubling statistics tonight. Good evening, Jonathan.
Hi, good evening, Brett. CDC officials are describing this report as a wake-up call. They say too many Americans are dying too early, too often, from causes that are usually preventable. The leading factors driving this trend, drug abuse and suicide. In 2017, drug overdoses claimed more than 70,000 lives in the U.S., nearly a 10% increase over the previous year. CDC officials say synthetic opioids play a big role.
We've had troubles with an overdose epidemic for several years now, but the last few years we've seen an increase in fentanyl and fentanyl-like analogs that are extremely dangerous. So we may not have more people using drugs, but the drugs on the street are even more dangerous than they had been.
The suicide rate among working-age Americans increased 34% between the years 2000 and 2016. Many public health officials attribute the increase in overdoses and suicides to what they call an epidemic of despair.
There are complex factors related to, economics and how people are feeling about their life and their future. And it's difficult to address some of these in the traditional medical setting.
The CDC looked at the occupations with the highest suicide rates. For men, construction and extraction, arts and entertainment, and installation and repair had the highest rates. For women, arts and entertainment, protective service, and healthcare support topped the list. Public health experts say targeting suicide prevention efforts to high-risk occupations can help save lives. Employee assistance programs, workplace wellness programs, and online tools, including mental health screenings and education, can help. Federal health officials are also reminding Americans of the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is available to anyone online or by phone. The number is 1-800-273-8255 or 1-800-273-TALK. These services are important as ever in light of this new report coming from the CDC, which federal health officials are calling a call to action. Brett?
Put that number on our website as well. Jonathan Serra in Atlanta. Jonathan, thanks. 42 migrants arrested during Sunday's protest that ended in tear gas at the border Tijuana will not be charged. That decision not to prosecute comes despite President Trump's vow that the U.S. will not tolerate lawlessness. Homeland Security Department did release a statement today on the protest saying that most of the 7,000 caravan members do not meet the requirements for claiming asylum and that those ineligible migrants are stretching the resources for those trying to enter the country illegally. Meantime, Border Patrol agents also confirmed they arrested an MS-13 gang member who they say entered the U.S. illegally and was among the caravan members intending to try to seek asylum in the U.S. One of President Trump's cabinet members is under fire for giving what many see as an easy out for an accused pedophile. The Miami Herald broke this story this week about Labor Secretary Alexander Acosta's previous legal decisions when he was U.S. attorney dealing with hedge fund manager Jeffrey Epstein, who stands accused of sex trafficking underage girls. But it's Epstein's ties to some big names that are also getting headlines, including former President Bill Clinton. Correspondent Jillian Turner with the story.
Alexander Acosta is a rising star in the Trump administration. The Secretary of Labor and only Hispanic cabinet member oversees one of the nation's largest federal agencies. Acosta's name also once appeared on the White House shortlist to replace Attorney General Jeff Sessions, but with increased notoriety has come increased scrutiny. A new Miami Herald investigative report has unearthed court documents that shed light on Acosta's time as a federal prosecutor in Florida during the George W. Bush administration, and a highly unusual deal he struck at the time with one of the nation's most high-profile pedophiles. Jeffrey Epstein, multi-millionaire Palm Beach hedge fund manager, was accused by Palm Beach police of using female recruiters to lure underage girls to his waterfront mansion for, quote, unlawful sexual activity. Epstein's also known for his circle of powerful friends. They include Bill Clinton, with whom he once shared 26 private jet trips, Prince Andrew of the British royal family, and even President Donald Trump, who called Epstein a terrific guy in a 2002 New York Magazine interview. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. Before Acosta shuttered the FBI's ongoing investigation and sealed the plea agreement, Epstein faced a life sentence, but he ended up only serving 13 months in state prison. Lawmakers tried to get to the bottom of the notorious deal during Acosta's confirmation hearings last year.
A plea that guarantees that someone goes to jail, that guarantees that someone register generally, is a good thing.
The Department of Labor tells Fox News the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida has defended the actions in this case across 3 administrations.
Acosta's allies insist these latest court revelations are political smears, but the controversy isn't over. A pending lawsuit claims Acosta's office violated federal law by failing to inform Epstein's victims of the plea deal. Bret?
Jillian, thank you. President Trump's former fixer is turning on him, what it could mean for the Russia investigation, and where is Mueller headed next? The panel joins me next.
With Advil Liquid.
Michael Cohen is lying. He's a weak person, and what he's trying to do is get a reduced sentence. We were thinking about building a building. I decided ultimately not to do it. Even if he was right, it doesn't matter, because I was allowed to do whatever I wanted during the campaign.
He is afraid of the truth and doesn't want Mueller or anyone else to uncover it.
If anything the president has said is true, that there's no there, why are all his closest associates being found guilty of lying about their ties to Russia?
Surprised us, but we're told that the White House knew about it Wednesday night. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein knew about it on Monday, that Michael Cohen was going to appear in court and plead guilty to lying to Congress. U.S. versus Michael Cohen, court filing. Cohen made false statements to both the House and Senate Intelligence Committees to, 1, minimize links between the Moscow project, this is the Trump project in Moscow potential, and individual 1, Trump, and 2, give false impressions that the Moscow project ended before the Iowa caucuses in the very first primary in hopes of limiting the ongoing Russia investigations. The Moscow project was discussed multiple times within the company and did not end in January 2016. Instead, as late as approximately June 2016, Cohen and individual 2, believed to be Felix Sater, discussed efforts to obtain Russian governmental approval for the Moscow project. Now, back in January of 2017, President Trump tweeted this. He also talked about it, but he tweeted this: Russia has never tried to use leverage over me. I have nothing to do with Russia. No deals, no loans, no nothing. Let's bring in our panel. Former White House Press Secretary Ari Fleischer, Susan Page, Washington Bureau Chief at USA Today, and Molly Hemingway, Senior Editor at The Federalist. Okay, Ari, your impressions of today, how significant, what it means for the president and the Mueller investigation.
Well, you know, as Charles Krauthammer used to say, this feels like a cover-up of something that is not a crime.
There is no underlying issue here that would require somebody or make somebody think they need to lie. What difference does it make if this project ended in January of 2017 or January 2016 or June of 2016? So when Michael Cohen lies about it, what's the purpose? What's the motive? And I can't see any motive here. Why would he do it? There's no underlying crime. There's nothing wrong with a president. It may be unsavory for a person running for the president to do business deals abroad while they're running for president, but it's not a crime. Susan?
If you want to know whether President Trump thinks this is a serious issue, just look at his response, which has been quite agitated. And he clearly thinks this is a serious story. And I think there's a big difference between January and June, actually, because by June it was clear that Donald Trump was going to be the Republican nominee for president. And at that time, his personal lawyer is reaching out to a Kremlin official for help on a private business deal at a time the Russians are also have a concerted effort to meddle in our presidential election to hurt Hillary Clinton and help Donald Trump. That is a web that is being revealed by Special Counsel Mueller. It's not over yet. This isn't the last disclosure we're going to have, but it seems to me that that is a troubling set. That's a troubling context to look at today's plea deal.
Molly.
It's just worth remembering that the special counsel was set up to investigate treasonous collusion with Russia to steal an election, not to investigate whether Donald Trump is a global businessman and was doing business in the year 2016. It is good, though, to hold people accountable for lying to Congress. It is a very bad thing to do. And it's been unfortunate that we've seen so few people held accountable for lying to Congress, even in this Russia story. For instance, Christopher Steele, who built the entire Russia dossier, was referred by the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee almost a year ago because they knew he lied to the FBI. Glenn Simpson gave testimony. He's the guy who was hired by Hillary Clinton to set up the whole Russia story. He gave testimony that was at odds with what Bruce Orr gave, meaning that one or both of them lied to Congress. So it's important that everybody be held accountable for lying to federal officials. It's not even just them. You look at James Clapper, who lied to Congress about spying on everyone, John Brennan, who lied to Congress about spying on Congress, Hillary Clinton, who lied about whether she knew how classified systems worked in her interview with the FBI. So holding people accountable for lying is a good thing. It should be done overall.
Sure. Donald Trump's not, at the time, January 2017, under oath, as he's tweeting that he had no ties, no nothing, no loans, obviously. He's not under oath when he's telling the reporters that he had nothing ever to do with Russia.
But he didn't have business deals with Russia.
Well, it didn't develop, but it was being discussed as it continued on until June, as opposed to January. My point is that is there something here as far as money? We don't know. Deutsche Bank did a lot of his deals. They got raided for the Panama Papers today. There's no tangential, we don't know that it's tied at all. But if there's a money link here, is it beyond then lying to Congress and it's Russia holding something over Donald Trump's head?
But I think you just used the magic words we should all abide by.
We don't know.
We don't know. And the problem I have with this town is when people don't know, it doesn't stop them from talking. They make the worst accusations they can make against people in public life who they do not like, even if they do not know any of the underlying facts, is what Senator Schumer did today, which is what Senator Warner did today.
But I'm saying to you, I'm asking you, where potentially could it go?
I'm not willing to speculate because only Bob Mueller will know that. And I don't think any of us should try to put ourselves in Mueller's shoes and speculate it's one way or another. If Mueller's got the goods, Mueller will deliver the goods and will judge at that time. If he doesn't, this town owes Donald Trump a huge apology for 2 years.
And is there a sense, Susan, in this town that it's coming to a head, that it comes before Christmas, perhaps?
I think there is a sense that Robert Mueller seems to be closer and closer to making a report on some aspects of his investigation. His investigation is not going to end then, but the aspects involving President Trump most directly that we've been so curious about. Something else is going to happen in January, and that is Democrats in the House are going to gain the power to have hearings and demand testimony and subpoena documents. And the question you just raised about did Russia launder money through the Trump Organization, that's been one of the things that's been speculated about. That is a specific issue that Adam Schiff, the new chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, said today he is going to start pursuing as soon as he's able.
Molly.
We don't start with we don't say, here's the person, find me the crime. We look for crimes and then we determine what should be done about it. And there has been so much crazy speculation without any evidence of a crime. And yet we actually have evidence of all sorts of criminal things, like criminal leaking of classified information against Trump officials, lying to a FISA court, all sorts of problems like this that aren't even being worried about by people who think, well, if we just keep digging, maybe we can finally get Trump. How about we deal with actual crimes and start investigating those?
All right, I'm going to play this this protection of Special Counsel Mueller. First from the minority leader now, Chuck Schumer.
This idea that we don't need to pass legislation to protect the special counsel because there's no way President Trump will interfere with the investigation is flat out absurd.
Our job here should be to protect Robert Mueller so that he can do his job. And he can do his job not for him, but for the American people.
Bob Mueller has been left alone. I think he's going to continue to be left alone. If I was really, really stressed about Bob Mueller, I'd do something. I'm not worried about Bob Mueller.
All right, the president has said he's not firing Bob Mueller. Matt Whitaker has said he doesn't have any plans to get rid of Bob Mueller. But there is really an effort on Capitol Hill to protect Bob Mueller.
From what? I mean, if Donald Trump and Acting Attorney General Whitaker were threats to the Mueller probe, then why did Bob Mueller get the plea agreement with Michael Cohen? He had no problems getting that. No one's interfering with him. No one's cutting his budgets. No one's even going to say you're laid off in case the government closes down. So it's an unconstitutional move in the first place, which is why I oppose it as somebody who used to work in the White House. Congress does not have the power to tell the president you can or cannot fire somebody who is an inferior officer in the executive branch. So it's unconstitutional. And I don't know how you can say you're trying to defend Bob Mueller and the Constitution by passing an unconstitutional law.
All right, we're going to talk about this and a little G20 right after the break.
I probably will be meeting with President Putin. We haven't terminated that meeting. I was thinking about it, but we haven't. They'd like to have it. I think it's a very good time to have the meeting. I'm getting a full report on the plane as to what happened with respect to that, and that will determine what I'm going to be doing.
Well, President Trump did get that full report on Air Force One, and a few moments later, when he was on the plane, he tweeted out, based on the fact that the ships and sailors have not been returned to Ukraine from Russia, I've decided it would be best for all parties concerned to cancel my previously scheduled meeting in Argentina with President Vladimir Putin. I look forward to a meaningful summit again as soon as the situation is resolved. Back with the panel quickly. Susan, thoughts on this?
Skeptical, maybe, about the stated reason. Perhaps it was related to the awkwardness that might have ensued if he had met with President Putin in the immediate aftermath of this plea bargain.
Ukraine, though, is a situation, and they're making a firm stance on the situation with that.
Yeah, for people who believe in the Russia conspiracy theory, I guess they would think that this was tied to that. For people who watched what Trump has done with Russia for the last 2 years, this is perfectly in keeping with it, and it's a really appropriate reaction. It's not an overreaction, but it's letting them know we take this seriously. They need to step up. Europe obviously needs to respond to what's happened in the region, and we are doing a good job of supporting them.
The biggest meeting, though, could be the one with President Xi of China, and what comes out of those negotiations, Ari?
This is consequential, and it's going to last a long time, the implications of this trade war we're in with China, and whether or not President Trump is the one who can get China to stop stealing, to behave the way a nation should behave in international order, particularly when it comes to trade, intellectual property, and how deep they reach into Americans' pockets when Americans want to do business in China. Everybody knows that's the price. They steal from you, and you put up with it. They're a rogue nation when it comes to playing by the rules. If Donald Trump's trade war, doing things that I was taught you just don't do, enacting tariffs, turns out to back China down and get them to behave, this is a monumental consequence.
You know, Susan,
absolutely.
he said going to the plane, you know, maybe I like it the way it is. You know, yesterday, Larry Kudlow said, there's a chance we're going to do a deal. The market shot up. He says, well, maybe I like it, the tariffs the way they are. The market shots down. You know, Donald Trump's negotiating here before he sits down with President Xi.
So if it works, it's going to be great. You're right, a big achievement. If it doesn't work, we're heading into a big trade war with China that could have some real economic consequences, not just for the Chinese, for Americans too.
But the Chinese would feel it as well. I mean, everybody in China is concerned about that.
And to Ari's point, there was a study that came out 2 weeks ago that showed of the 25% tariffs that we've levied, Chinese producers have had to pay the bulk of that, literally 20% of it, where American producers are having to do just a tiny fraction of that. It's because they chose really good products with price elasticity so that we could handle handle it much better than China. That might not be the case if the trade war ramps up, but this is a very good position for the U.S. to be in going into a negotiation, or we might squeeze them a little more.
Important to know that as that first panel, it's going to get a lot of coverage. These are big things that will affect everybody. Thank you all. When we come back, a final tribute to one of America's heroes. Finally tonight, one Vietnam veteran may be gone, but he certainly is not forgotten. Private First Class Stanley Stoltz was reported to have no known family. And when he died, there was concern over his funeral being a very lonely one. Well, his funeral notice went viral, and more than 400 people, including some family and old friends, came to Omaha National Cemetery to attend the service for the 73-year-old veteran. The flag on Stoltz's casket will now be flown at that cemetery on Memorial Day. So that's a great story about America. Thanks for inviting us into your home tonight. That's it for this special report. Fair, balanced, and unafraid. The story, hosted by Martha, starts right now. Hey, Martha.
Hey there.